All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Walker, and I am the Director of Outreach and Programs here at New Yorkers for Parks. I am here today with my colleague, Laura Montross.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Montross, and I am the Outreach Coordinator at New Yorkers for Parks. First, Emily and I want to welcome everyone to today's webinar and say thank you for joining us. This afternoon's webinar is part of a series of webinars Emily and I are doing to share advocacy tools and resources created by New Yorkers for Parks to help New Yorkers like yourselves become empowered stewards of public space. Today's webinar will run for about an hour. We encourage all of you to ask lots of questions and contribute comments along the way. For the duration of the presentation, we will mute the participants, but feel free to chat log. We'll keep track of your submissions and take about 15 minutes at the end of our allotted time to open up a discussion and answer your questions.
All right. Thank you, Laura. For those of you who are not familiar with our organization, New Yorkers for Parks is the citywide independent organization championing quality parks and open spaces for all New Yorkers. Both at the city council level and with the Parks Department itself, to try and provide research and data that can help provide a roadmap for how to get better conditions in parks and playgrounds and open spaces citywide. One of the most common questions we hear from our constituents is how they can make a difference in their neighborhood parks and playgrounds. The answer is that there's money to be had from our elected officials for improvements, and today we're going to help you navigate through the process of advocating for and hopefully acquiring this funding.
So our presentation today is based on our advocacy guide that New Yorkers for Parks created in partnership with the Center for Urban Pedagogy, or CUP, and Partnerships for Parks in 2014. The Center for Urban Pedagogy is a nonprofit organization that uses the power of design and art to increase meaningful civic engagement by partnering policy advocates, like ourselves, with graphic designers to produce fold-out posters that explain complicated policy issues. Partnerships for Parks, as many of you may know, is a joint program of NYC Parks and the City Parks Foundation. So this advocacy guide, you can see the cover on the slideshow here, can be found on the New Yorkers for Parks website, and physical copies are also available in English and Spanish.
All right, and with that, let's get started.
All right, so Emily, what's the first step in solving a problem I see in my neighborhood park or playground?
The first thing to do is to determine what kind of problem you see in your park. Park problems generally fall into two categories, and you can see here on this slide that they break down into either a maintenance or staff issue, or what we would call an expense issue in the city budget, or a capital project. And capital projects are where major pieces of infrastructure or improvements are made. So the first category involves maintenance and staff issues, and their solutions are funded by the city's expense or operating budget, as I mentioned a little earlier. These are generally considered small repairs or improvements in how your park or playground is cared for. And some of the examples of this include repairing broken benches or equipment, mowing lawns, pruning trees, cleaning comfort stations, more frequent trash pickup, the usual day-to-day things that really can make or break your experience in a park or playground. If these are the kinds of improvements you want to see, you're going to need to work with staff at New York City Parks and at Partnerships for problem of this nature that requires immediate attention. For example, a broken tree limb or broken play equipment that presents a safety hazard. We actually recommend that you immediately report it to 311. The city is actually required to respond to these issues within 24 hours. So sometimes.
The second category of park problems involves large-scale infrastructure issues that are solved through capital projects funded by the city's capital budget. These are projects where something is built or major infrastructure improvements are made. Generally speaking, these projects must cost more than $35,000. If the price tag is less than that, you're probably looking at a maintenance or staff issue. Some examples of capital projects include installing new athletic fields or courts, getting new playground equipment, building a dog run, improving ADA accessibility. In this case, you'll need to work with the staff at New York City Parks Department, Partnerships for Parks, and your local officials to get funding for these kind of improvements. Something to take into consideration: New York City Parks Department Capital Tracker to see if there are already planned improvements for your park or playground. It may be that funding has been allocated to improve the problem you've identified in your park, but if construction hasn't started yet, it can be hard to tell if something is in the works. So we've included the link of the capital tracker here on our slide. Also, something to consider, some big capital projects might be happening underground. They might not be visible. For example, new sewage or new water for your space. In that case, the capital tracker can help you identify which existing projects are taking place.
All right, now that we've sort of gone through the two types of issues you might be experiencing in your park, we're going to focus specifically on the process of advocating for and acquiring funding for capital projects.
So, Emily, I've identified that my park needs some major infrastructure improvements, and I also understand that this requires funding for a capital project. What now?
So the first step to seeing an improvement of any kind is to start building a coalition of neighbors and park users who also want to see change in their park. Some of you might be already members of a Friends of group for a park or playground, in which case you've got a head start, and that is fantastic. If you aren't sure if there's an existing group or if you're interested in starting one, we recommend that the first step is really to reach out to your Partnerships for Parks outreach coordinator. They can help you identify any existing park and community groups in your neighborhood who might already be engaged around your local open space. Since your ultimate goal is to secure funding from your local officials, you're going to a council member or borough president that your idea has traction. There are a few ways to accomplish this, so let's start with the basics. Building the ranks of support is really going to be your first step. Whether you're a member of a neighborhood group already or starting from scratch, you want to engage as many different stakeholders as possible to lend support.
You want to identify other community-based groups in your neighborhood, reach out to local businesses and churches, and try to engage park or playground users directly. This can be a great way to gather input and ideas for park changes, and it can also help you add to your ranks for future events. As you move through the process of advocating for funding, you're going to want to keep these new partners engaged with your efforts. If you are going to a local community board to seek support for your proposal, for example, you should invite your new stakeholders to join the meeting and lend support. You could start a petition about your efforts and have your partners circulate it within the neighborhood. There is real strength in numbers, and the more folks you engage early on, the better. This gives you a heads up on thinking about what changes you want to implement that reflect what other residents want to see as well, and gives you a network of folks to help keep the pressure on as you continue to seek funding.
Community coalition. Now, how do we engage decision makers?
That's a great question. Your coalition should share ideas about how to improve your park, plan what your park needs and how to get it, and then reach out to elected officials. Here we are referring to and borough presidents. They are officials with discretionary funds that can give support to your park projects. Here are some tips on how to effectively engage these officials.
First things first, we really recommend, if you aren't sure who represents you, we've included a link on this slide, www.mygovnyc.org. You can type in your address and find out everyone who represents you from the federal to the hyperlocal community board level. So that's generally the first step. It's ideas in mind for the improvements you want to see, but you should also remain flexible. It may be that others in the community have already approached your elected official about the issue you've identified. So we recommend that you keep an open mind and open ears. This may be a good way to meet new supporters who also want to see the same change in your community. Second, we recommend that you use the time you have effectively by staying focused on your issue. Elected officials are busy, so use your time wisely. It also should go without saying that a little courtesy and respect can go a long way to building trust and support long-term with both your representatives and their staff. Building staff trust is actually a critical part of this process. They are the eyes and ears of our elected officials, and they can really advocate for your projects to their bosses. Being gently persistent. You don't have to call every single day, but be reliable in your follow-up communication after meetings. If you've sent a follow-up email or letter to their office, call a few weeks later to check in with the staff. Last, but certainly not least, be patient. While it can be frustrating to wait, the reality of our government is that it moves a little slower than most of us would probably like. Our elected officials are responsible for so many issues in our communities. We have to be realistic about their ability to meet every need as quickly as we'd like to see. It's also worth noting that for issues that require funding allocations, such as a capital improvement, the funding can only come through when the city decides on the budget. And that's a process that happens once a year in June. So understanding these issues of timing and constraints are really going to be key to managing your expectations of the process, as well as the expectations of the community members in your coalition.
Great. And when Emily identified how important it is to keep in contact with the staff with your elected officials, some of these people you should consider are the chief of staff, the budget director, folks who will be making the actual decisions and helping your elected official make those decisions. So just a few more tips. Being prepared for your meeting is really important. Try to gather the following items that will help you build a case for your proposed project. So remember to be specific but flexible. Bringing photos will highlight the problems in your park, playground, or garden. It can help to pull together a list of the members of your coalition. In this process, there really is strength in numbers. If available, a letter of support from other public officials, like your community board, for example, and also general information about what your coalition has accomplished is really helpful. If your group has held a series of public, be sure to mention these in your meeting.
Finally, we recommend that you try to include data and facts that can support your cause. New Yorkers for Parks has a range of research tools that can help New Yorkers from every neighborhood build a case for improved open space. Our 2015 City Council District Profiles, which are available on our website, provide comprehensive information about open space resources, including a district map of all public open spaces and other quality of life measures, such as health and socioeconomic statistics. The fact that these are broken down by council district make them a really compelling document to bring along when you meet with your council members specifically. In addition, we have a report card series which provides maintenance data for various kinds of open spaces in New York City, from large parks, which are about 20 to 500 acres in size, neighborhood parks, which are 1 to 20 acres, and beaches. Our Open Space Index series provides neighborhood level data of open space provision and demographic data at a deeper level than our City Council district profiles. If you happen to reside in one of the neighborhoods we have surveyed already, this report can be a fantastic jumping off point for discussing your neighborhood's needs. We do, in terms of research and planning, are really completed with an aim to help you see. And just a reminder, all of these are available on our website, ny4p.org.
So once you have your coalition built and you've reached out to your elected officials, you specifically want to identify the elected officials who can find funds for your project. So who else can I reach out to along the way?
So one thing to keep in mind, and we're going to go through these each specifically, but when it comes to the Parks Department, the Community Board, and if you are very lucky, the mayor, you may be able to engage, but there's really not money to be had from the Community Board. And it's very rare for community groups to get funding directly from the mayor. When it comes to New York City Parks and the CBs, you want to get support and knowledge, but go in with an expectation that they can't provide funding. Your city council and your borough president, however, do have funding. So we're going to focus now on how to really engage them and try to get that funding for what you want to see. So as we've mentioned before, a good first point of contact is the outreach coordinators at Partnerships for Parks. They can help you identify new potential coalition members and can help initiate contact with key Parks Department staff you'll need to work with along the way, such as your park manager and your borough commissioner. Your borough commissioner and their staff can help you understand the feasibility of your proposed improvement and can help give you a sense of the cost of the improvement. Without a sense of the cost, it will be very difficult to get the funding you need from your elected officials. So this is key information you're going to want to gather along the way. The same principles we laid out earlier for engaging elected officials should be followed as you start to build a relationship with and meet with your borough commissioner for parks. Be courteous, be persistent, and be patient. Keep in mind that the Parks Department likely will not have the funding to allocate to your project, but their involvement and support is key to your project moving forward.
The other important support group is your local community board that we mentioned before, New York neighborhood. And while they don't have funding to give, they can play a powerful role in helping you to convince your elected officials that your project should get funding. It is critical to work with the district manager for your local community board, as well as the dedicated parks committee of the community board. Your ultimate goal with the community board is to get your project listed on their district budget priorities list, an exercise that takes place every year. So just a few steps. Your first step will be to contact your local CB office. Introduce yourself, your coalition, and your issue to the district manager. You'll want to ask about getting added to the agenda for an upcoming coalition can present your idea to the members. Your idea added to the upcoming meeting agenda. Plan to give a brief presentation of your idea. Depending on the community board, you may not have more than 2 or 3 minutes to make this presentation succinct. At this time, you'll want to ask for a follow-up meeting and seek a letter of support that you can then take to your local elected officials. In the late spring, summer, and early fall months, your local community board will start to generate the final version of its district budget priorities list. There are 40 projects in every district that get added to the final list, and your goal is to get your project listed. Bring your coalition members along to CB hearings and meetings where the district priorities list is being discussed. The more community members who turn out in support of an issue, the more likely it is to make it on the final list. The reason this is such an important step is because the final version of the district budget priorities list directly influences the mayor's office as it creates a budget for the next fiscal year.
Many of the tactics we described earlier when talking about engaging public officials come in very handy for reaching out to your council member and their staff. Again, that outlines the issue in your park, who is in your coalition, and any support you may have gathered along the way, like from your local community board. We also recommend waiting about 2 weeks after sending this letter to call the office and follow up. This is going to be the time when you want to ask for a meeting with the council member and their chief of staff. Remember, when the meeting takes place, you want to be mindful of the time photos and any other supporting documentation or data about the district and your park. Provide the cost estimate your park's borough commissioner gave you, and share more info about your coalition. In addition to seeking capital discretionary money for your proposed improvement, you also want to ask your council member to add your project to the borough statement of budget priorities, if possible.
A lot of what Emily has just laid out in terms of working with your council member will also apply to working with your borough president. The strategies are largely the same. You want to start by writing a formal letter to introduce the issue, make the follow-up call to ask for an in-person meeting, and bring along all of the information and supporting documentation of your issue that you brought to your council member. You'll want to ask them to contribute discretionary capital funds towards your project and their help getting your project on the borough statement of budget priorities.
So now that we've gone through the steps to engage your officials, let's talk about the general time frame. You might be wondering how long this will all take and when you will know if your project has received funding. Generally speaking, the first version of the city budget, which is called the mayor's preliminary budget, gets released in late January every year. This means you should plan on reaching out to the staff at your local elected officials' offices at the beginning of the calendar year to remind them about the duration of the budget is released. The City Council then has about 2 months to hold hearings for every agency about its budget. Specific capital projects generally aren't discussed at these hearings, but know that your council member and borough president are working with their staff during this time to come up with the list of capital projects they would like to fund. After the council holds their hearings, the city releases a second round of the budget in April, known as the executive budget. This version contains council priorities in addition to mayoral ones. From there, the mayor's office and the city adopted budget, which must be agreed upon by the end of June every year. Usually, this version of the budget is finalized in early June, so keep an eye out for New Year Q to reach out to your elected official staff to see if your project received funding, and hopefully the answer is yes.
Well, my project didn't get funded. Now what?
Don't give up.
So remember, New York City is a huge place, and there are many needs that need to be accommodated by our officials. Just because you didn't get funding in the first year doesn't mean you won't be successful in the upcoming years. Laying the groundwork by meeting with staff, getting them up to speed on your park's needs, and engaging your neighbors for a common cause is critical work, even if you don't see results right away. This just means you might need to keep chipping away for the next budget cycle to keep building support for your project.
Okay, my project got some of the funding, but not all. What do I do?
So remember, capital projects can often come with a hefty price tag. It's to be expected that a major capital project will take a few years to build up all the funding needed to move forward. Keep the process going. The worst thing you could do is get complacent and assume the rest of the funding will come through in the next budget year. Keep meeting with staff, keep engaging your neighbors, and keep advocating for your project.
Okay, my project was fully funded. What should I expect now?
Well, first, congratulations. If your project got all the funding it needed, you should expect the Parks Department to start the design process. Stay engaged with your Partnerships for Parks outreach coordinator and your borough commissioner, and certainly keep your community coalition plugged into the process. The Parks Department will hold at least one community visioning session to get feedback on the design of your project. This is a great chance to help shape the final outcome of your park improvement.
So in general, we've broken down here in the advocacy guide what the timeline should look like for this entire process. Year one is when you really want to focus on building your coalition. This is when you want to go out and meet neighbors, reach out to local businesses and institutions, and reach out to your Partnerships for Parks outreach coordinator. In year two, you and your coalition should start attending community events and meeting with public officials. Start meeting with the community board, your council member and their staff, the Parks Department, and your Borough President. In years 3, 4, and possibly 5, this is when you want to start and keep to building the case for your project to receive funding. Remember, it often takes at least 2 years for all of the funding to get allocated. And depending on the ultimate price tag, it can take more if it's a significant cost. In years when your project gets the funding it needs, you should expect that capital construction process to take at least 3 years before it's finished. This might seem like a long time, but this is actually fairly average for a new park project. Stay engaged and stay patient. Making change isn't an overnight process.
This slide shows you a good way of noting key contacts for your journey to capital funding. We recommend you keep a running list of your local community boards, council members, borough presidents, and Partnership for Parks outreach coordinators. Have their phone numbers listed somewhere so you need to reach out and follow up when needed. Keeping tabs on this a lot smoother.
And we just wanted to make a note. There's another great way to acquire funding for local capital projects, and that's through the participatory budgeting process in New York City. Participatory budgeting is a process in which New York City Council members allocate $1 million of their discretionary capital money to projects that are created by and voted on by the residents of the district. The idea behind this effort is to engage folks who are often excluded from traditional voting processes, such as undocumented residents, the formerly incarcerated, youth, and people of color. PB can be a fantastic way of expensive capital improvements in your park or playground, and it might be a good option for navigating the capital process more quickly. To find out more about PB, you can visit labs.council.nyc/PB. I'm going to repeat that because I think the sound might have cut out. It's labs.council.nyc/PB. And I think just a general note on this, if your council member does not participate, you can definitely encourage them to join the participatory budgeting process if they aren't already a part of it.
So at this time, we're going to check in to see if we've got any questions, and we also want to direct your attention to our contact information on the screen. We encourage all of you to reach out to Emily and myself if you have any questions after we've finished with the webinar. So we're going to take a look over at the chat log right now. So one of the first questions from Sabina in the Bronx is, can you repeat the web address one more time? And I assume you mean for the participatory budget, in which case it is http://labs.council/PB NYC participatory necessary A few other questions we got or comments. We realized that maybe there might have been some problems with the sound on this webinar. So first off, we do apologize for that. If you have any questions about things that maybe got cut off earlier, let us know. Yeah, it appears as if the sound's cutting out a little bit. But are there any other questions about the content? Certainly this webinar will be available on our website, both the recording and the text, so we can provide it for you in the future. Questions? All right, it appears as if there isn't, in which case we wanted to thank you guys all so much for oh wait, we got one more question. Emily, do you want to take control here?
Sure. So Sabina from the Bronx has asked if we have any examples of parks that have gone through this process. There are quite a few that I can think of, but one really successful example that is now in construction is Astoria Heights Playground in Astoria, Queens. We had this child use the playground who reached out to our office a few years ago to express concern about the conditions, and before we had this fantastic advocacy guide available, but what we recommended was exactly the steps we laid out. Reach out to the Partnerships for Parks coordinator, see if they can connect you with the borough staff at parks, and work with your elected officials. And she went through that process. She built a Friends of group from the ground up, and they have been incredibly effective, and they are now about to have a multi-million-dollar complete renovation of the playground that just started about a month ago. So that's an example of a group that didn't exist maybe 3 years ago, but through the process of identifying that this playground was in unacceptable condition for the children of the neighborhood, folks really came together and they made a difference, and now they're seeing a new playground in about a year. There are definitely other examples we can think of, and if you want to email us, we're happy to share some previous success stories and perhaps connect you with other advocates who have gone through this process. Very attainable process, so we would encourage you to go through. If you think that you have a park or playground that could be improved, your council member probably would agree with you if you bring it to their attention. And it looks like Jeffrey Rowland has a question about if the park is both DOT land but a part of Green Thumb, and do we start with DOD or parks? That is a very good question. I think in general, we would recommend that you start with the Parks Department. And I say that simply because DOT as an agency, or the Department of Transportation, isn't as much of a community-faced organization or agency as the Parks Department is. They don't have an organization along the lines of Partnerships for Parks in place to really interface with community members, and Green Thumb as well. So if it's a garden you're working with, if you have a Green Thumb coordinator, we'd really recommend starting there, and they should be able to connect you with the folks at DOT that you would need to work with. But that's a really good question, and if you have any trouble along the way, we would encourage you to reach out to us at New Yorkers for Parks. We try to help provide technical assistance as we can, but I do think that with the Parks Department and Green Thumb at first, and then see if they can connect you with DOT. Great questions so far. Are there any others before we sign off? And please feel free to give us a call. We have our phone numbers listed, our emails. We are always happy to answer questions. That's what Laura and myself. One more note, for those of you who are interested in the hard copy of this advocacy guide, if you don't already have it, it's a really fantastic fold-out poster. It's very detailed and it has more issues as well. If you're interested in receiving hard copies, go ahead about arranging for that. It is available as a PDF through our website, but there's a lot of fine print, so we would be happy to try and get physical copies to those of you who are interested. And one last call for any questions. I want to give folks time to type because I know it takes a little time. All right, it looks like that might be it. If there are any lingering questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We thank you all for your participation in this webinar, and we apologize again for the sound issue. I hope you all, and we hope this was helpful. There will be more webinars and meetings coming up, so stay tuned for more from New Yorkers for Parks. Have a great day, everyone.
Happy holidays.